In one of the best chess games so far this year, and my personal favorite game so far this year, David Anton of Spain defeated Czech star David Navara in the ChessKid Cup of the Champions Chess Tour. This is a game that feels straight out of the 1900s. It is in the style of the best chess masterpieces of the Romantic era, the kind of games that Paul Morphy used to win. It's one of the smoothest, prettiest, and most instructive attacking wins that you will ever see. Navara has the white pieces, and he opens the game here with pawn d4. We get d5, c4, pawn e6, knight c3, and bishop b4, the classic Nimzo Indian defense from David Anton. So we get pawn a3, forcing the exchange of the bishop here on c3, and after the recapture, we get knight f6, e3, c6, a very sturdy defense from black. Pawn to a4, castles, bishop a3, tickling the rook, which moves over to e8. Now, knight f3, and queen c7. This is really a very high-class waiting move from black. The question for white is, do I have as good a set of waiting moves as black just displayed? And the answer seems to be no. White tries something very similar with queen c2, but the impact of queen c2 isn't going to be quite as strong as queen c7 is in this game. Now here we get pawn to b6 from black, pawn takes d5, pawn takes d5, and the queen is opened up to put that pressure on the backward pawn, as we talked about. White really avoids the idea of pawn to c4, and as a result, black is going to be able to develop and start putting pressure. Bishop b5, this invites the move bishop d7, which is played. Bishop d3, I guess that David Navara is hoping that the bishop would be badly placed here on d7, but as we'll see later, if nothing else, it does allow more rapid inclusion of this rook at a critical moment. We get knight c6, black is preparing pawn to e5, and this is a great moment again to play pawn c4, and the game should be balanced. Instead, though, we get castles. Pawn to e5 is played, and now black is really starting to take over the initiative, and the available lines for white that will be okay are starting to shrink. White is going to need to play accurately. Now, after e5, there's the idea of pawn to e4, and this would both gain space, which is a big problem, and immediately it would fork the bishop and the knight and win material, so it makes sense that you need to capture on e5. Pawn takes e5, knight takes e5, knight takes e5, and now if queen captures on e5, black is actually a little bit better with a bit better pawn structure, a bit better development. That makes a lot of sense. But David Anton is more ambitious. Rook takes e5. This move seems like it could be clumsy because the rook could be exposed, but the intention is rook h5 with a powerful rook lift and very dangerous attacking ideas. So this is the last moment to play pawn c4 and get a good position. Unfortunately, here we see the move rook fc1, and this is just about the only really serious mistake that Navara makes in the game. This prepares pawn c4 instead of playing pawn c4, and that is just too slow in this position. Here we get rook h5, and now it's already very difficult for white to meet the threat of queen takes h2. After rook h5, Navara tries pawn to h3, which is really natural, takes the pressure off of h2, but it invites here bishop takes h3. Grandmaster Rafael Leitao, annotating this game for Chess.com, said this is the kind of sacrifice that you should just play without thinking about it at all. So bishop takes h3, pawn takes, rook takes h3, intending here queen h2 check and knight g4, and just so many crushing attacking ideas. The king tries to run, king f1. This makes total sense. Now, there are a lot of good moves here, but knight g4 is a nice one. This opens up the idea of rook to h2, queen to h2, even rook takes e3 is possible here because capture of the rook would allow a royal fork. So the king tries to run again, king e1. There was no way really to save this position, but this allows a spectacular conclusion to the game. Here, David Anton goes for rook takes e3 check, sacrificing the rook and getting a brilliant move. If you capture the rook, then there is queen g3 check, and the queen and knight in combination against the king are either going to checkmate or are going to win the white queen. For example, king d2, queen takes e3 check, king back, and knight f2 check, and there's no way out of the check other than giving up the queen, and this is a winning position for black. So After rook takes e3 check here, Navara actually tries to defend with bishop e2, saying, I'm not going to take the rook. I'm just going to keep defending here by plugging my bishop into e2 and hoping that I can just keep your pieces at bay. But David Anton is not to be denied here. And he is on fire. He's finding the best moves. He's finding the most spectacular moves. He plays rook a to e8. The final piece comes into the attack, and there is a massive threat of rook takes e2 check, which would win the game. At this point, there is no alternative. The rook must be captured on e3. F takes e3, but the queen is still coming in. Queen g3 check. Now, at this point, I'm sure that Navara knows that he is losing. A different grandmaster might have resigned the game, but Navara is famous for his sportsmanship. He allows the game to play out to checkmate, and we can really admire that. I know that he sees it coming, but he plays into the most spectacular combination, I think, for the fans, allowing David Anton to demonstrate all of his critical ideas. If the king goes over to f1, you actually have 3 checkmates. You can pick between queen here and either knight check. All of these are checkmates. So after queen g3 check, the only other move you could consider here is king d1. And it's worth pointing out that after knight takes on e3 with check, you have a royal fork, and that might be enough of a reason to stop your calculations. But you're not actually even going to win the white queen, because after king d2, the best move is knight to c4 check, and this just forces checkmate. If the king comes back, there's queen g1 with mate on the next move, and if the bishop takes, you're not taking that bishop, you're going queen check, and then king back, and then mate with queen e1. Very, very pretty stuff, but not as pretty as the game continuation, which is king d2, queen takes e3 check, king back to d1, and certainly not a repetition here with queen g1 and queen e3. First, we do get queen g1, but after king d2, it's time for one final sacrifice of the rook. Rook takes e2 check. This is just checkmate on the next move. Even if the rook sacrifice is declined, you would have checkmate right here. But the rook sacrifice is accepted as promised. Navara does play it out. The rook! We get queen f2 check, and wherever the king goes, you have mate on the next turn. If king d3, then you have queen to e3 checkmate, and if king d1, as played in the game, we get knight e3 checkmate. An amazing and beautiful game from David Anton. It's not the most complex game in the world, but that's one of the things I love. All of the play from black is so clean and crisp and clear and understandable. It's the kind of game that makes chess look easy, even though we know it's really, really hard. It's the kind of game we all aspire to play. Now, this is actually not David Anton's only moment of brilliance on Chess.com. He went viral for another clip, and we're going to show you that right now, just because it also needs to be appreciated to understand David Anton's genius.
Knight back to f1, amazing. Oh my god, you have to... Oh, still mate! You should have made a bishop. You could have flagged him with a bishop.
Oh my gosh.
We hope you've enjoyed this game and this final clip. If you want to see another one of the games of the year from 2020 analyzed by James Canty, click the video that is popping up on your screen right now.